Xi Jinping was put under pressure as soon as Donald Trump arrived in China, because the President of the United States landed in Beijing this Wednesday, May 13, 2026, with a crazy mission to get from China what they protect the most. The state visit, scheduled until May 15, opened a direct dispute between the two largest powers on the planet. The American arrival came as a surprise because Trump did not treat the visit as a regular ceremony. He brought to China a delegation with key figures from the US economy, including executives connected to Apple, Tesla, Boeing, BlackRock, Blackstone, Cargill, Citi, Cisco, Goldman Sachs, Meta, Micron, Qualcomm, Visa, and other strategic companies. The White House placed before Xi sectors that influence the entire powerful American economy. Beijing was expecting a tough meeting, but received an organized demonstration of economic strength. I'll tell you all about it in a moment, but now you'll want to be subscribed to the channel to stay well informed. Real-time information with the best journalistic quality you've ever seen. With the standard of credibility Milson Alves. For years, Beijing grew by selling to the world, attracting foreign factories and using access to the Chinese market as a bargaining tool. Now Trump has entered Beijing bringing exactly the businessmen that China wants to attract, control, or limit. The pressure became evident because the visit placed the American business elite alongside the President of the United States instead of leaving Washington to negotiate alone. The shock for Xi increases because the agenda wasn't limited to tariffs. Technology became the heart of the visit. Jensen Huang, president of NVIDIA, joined the delegation and brought into the meeting one of the most sensitive topics of the dispute, the advanced chips used in artificial intelligence. China wants access to high-performance components, but Washington knows that semiconductors are not just a commercial product. They are military power, industrial power, data power, and strategic advantage. China has been cornered because it needs both technology and stability at the same time. This is where Trump puts on the pressure. He arrives with businessmen, talks about openness, puts chips on the table, and forces Xi to respond not only as a political leader, but also as the head of an economy that needs to maintain access to the world. Taiwan became the point of greatest strategic tension. Beijing wants Washington to back down on arms sales and reduce its political presence around the island. But Trump's arrival does the opposite. It keeps the United States as a central player in the Indo-Pacific balance. China tries to treat Taiwan as an internal matter. But in reality, Trump makes it clear that Xi will not have a free path to intimidate Taiwan without facing the political strength of Washington. Iran was also a factor in the talks. Beijing tries to gain ground in the Middle East by using its relationship with Tehran, while Washington pressures networks linked to the Iranian regime and combats structures that challenge American interests. For Xi, the problem is clear. Supporting Tehran can yield influence against the United States, but it also exposes China to sanctions. China has to do this diplomatic pressure, because it still depends on Washington-led stability. This difference explains why the American arrival was strong. China can set the stage, but Trump brought up the issues that bother the regime. He put Xi in front of a tough choice: to negotiate with a power that still holds capital, technology, and alliances, or to turn the meeting into an open confrontation at a time when the Chinese economy needs predictability. American generals and commanders do not treat China as a secondary problem. They treat Beijing as the main long-term military challenge for the United States. In 2023, General Mark Milley told Congress that China was the pacing challenge for the American armed forces and that Beijing intended to become the dominant power in the Western Pacific and Asia within 10 years. China has to adapt. China adapt. General of the United States. By 2049, Trump arrives in China with a view shared by the senior US military leadership. Beijing is the structural adversary, not just a commercial competitor. Admiral Samuel Paparo, commander of US Indo-Pacific Command, also reinforced this view in a recent statement. He warned that China is advancing in missiles, space and counterspace capabilities, cyber warfare, hypersonic weapons, nuclear arsenal, and maritime force, creating a direct challenge to American national security and regional stability. In another document, Paparo stated that China is outproducing the United States in air, maritime, and missile capabilities. Trump arrives in Beijing knowing that China is trying to win through industrial and military scale, but Washington is responding with alliances, technology, and economic pressure. Admiral Philip D. Davidson, former commander of the Indo-Pacific, had also warned that China was accelerating and that the president understood that China does not have international governance. He said that the threat against Taiwan could still manifest itself within that decade. This assessment became well known because it put Taiwan at the center of the dispute between the two powers and showed that Beijing is not seen in Washington as a distant nation, but as a rival trying to undermine the American presence in the Pacific. The strongest historical reference point for this visit is the Taiwan Strait crisis of 1995 and 1996. During that period, China fired missiles near Taiwan to intimidate the island before the presidential election. The United States responded by sending 2 aircraft carrier groups to the region, showing that Beijing could apply pressure, but it didn't have sole control over the Indo-Pacific. The Washington Post reported in March 1996 that China had begun missile tests near Taiwan and that Washington responded with a second group of American ships. This episode works better in the script because it shows the same pattern. When China tries to impose fear, the United States responds with presence, military calculation, and direct pressure. Another strong historical fact is the trade war started by Trump against China, instead of accepting the old model in which Beijing was growing. With access to the American market, theft of intellectual property, and barriers against US companies, Trump imposed tariffs, opened up economic confrontation, and forced the signing of the Phase 1 trade agreement on January 15, 2020. The Office of the United States Trade Representative states that the agreement required structural changes in the Chinese economy, including intellectual property, technology transfer, agriculture, financial services, and trade expansion. This example matches the current visit because it shows Trump using trade as a weapon to pressure Beijing, not just as simple diplomacy. Tsai is startled because Trump surprised him right from the start with a show of power. He didn't just arrive to talk. He arrived bringing the weight of the United States into Beijing, surrounding China and Africa, areas where the regime most needs room to maneuver, market access, chips, and economic stability. For Trump, it became an opportunity to show that the United States is still able to corner Beijing without firing a shot, using trade, technology, alliances, and political pressure all at once. I'm Milson Alves, an international affairs specialist, and my purpose is to keep you well informed with the truth every day. The news links are in the video description. Leave a like on this video, subscribe, and at the end, check out the comments so you can be even more engaged with the Milson Alves community.